Okay, I am live. Okay, it says I'm live. Alright, I'm live. So, hey everyone, I'm Noah, and this is my show where I review films. So today I'm going to be I had been going to talk about the film Justice League and how much I hate that movie. But I've decided to save that for next week. I will be doing a Return to Salem's Lot instead. Co-written and directed by Larry Cohen. And the reason I am doing this is because Larry Cohen passed away recently. So I'm talking about this movie. So Larry Cohen is known for being a B-movie auteur of horror and science fiction films. He created It's Alive, which is about a killer baby. It Lives Again, a sequel about a killer baby. Uh, and there was a third film about a killer baby. I can't remember the title of. He also created The Stuff, which is about killer yogurt. And Q the Winged Serpent, which is about a killer winged serpent named Q. So, those are some of his movies. And this is a Return to Salem's Lot, meaning that it is a sequel to the Tobe Hooper film Salem's Lot. But before I talk about that, I'm going to talk about some of the movies that came out this week. Specifically, one movie. Us, which just came out. And Us is a film that I really enjoyed. Like, it is Jordan Peele's newest film. Jordan Peele, he made Get Out. And Us is all around, it's suspenseful, it's scary without having to rely on jump scares. It's a very well done, I'd say. And the thing is, you can say, there's stuff that doesn't make sense in it, sure. I mean, there's, certainly. But, it's still, it does a great job making the audience scared without having to rely on someone jumping out at the camera. It's just the movie has a unnerving quality to it. It's just unnerving and creepy the whole way through. It just... And Lupita Nyong'o, she's the actress, the main actress, the star of the movie, and she's great in it. She's all around. She has dual roles, and she plays both of those roles great. And a lot of the actors in this have to play dual roles in that movie, and they all did a great job. And Jordan Peele, the director of Us, I believe he's going to be directing and writing the reboot of the Twilight Zone series, which will be coming out soon on television. And you know what? I think he's going to do a great job just because of this movie. The movie Us has a very Twilight Zone feel. And that is the movie that I saw this week that I can tell you. Just go out and see it. It's great. And now I will be talking about sorry. 1 second. I'm working on something. I'm trying to get the music up. Give it a second. Okay, I don't know what's going wrong. Something's going wrong. Ooh, yeah, I should have checked on this. Is it working? No, it's not working. Okay, just imagine some music played, okay? Just picture in your head, there's a nice segue, we play a little bit of music, we cut it off before it becomes a thing that YouTube can take down the video for, and I started talking, okay? So, I'm talking about a Return to Salem's Lot. Now, Salem's Lot was originally a book written by Stephen King. It was, I think, his second book, second or third. It is it's I've read that book. It's a really good book. I mean, it's you can definitely tell he's still inexperienced. It's one of his earlier books. I don't think he really comes into his own until like The Road, and then after that he's just got like a string of hits like The Shining, Christine, like It, But yeah, Stephen King's first books were like Carrie, which was like it was short, but like it had a lot of good ideas, and like he was very rough around the edges at that time with like his writing, and like with time he like became like a really great writer. Like he became Stephen King, and but like still like a lot of the stuff you see in the later Stephen King books, it all starts with like Salem's Lot, and so with Salem's Lot being like as well liked as it is, and Stephen King being as big of a like writer as he is, inevitably it got a movie, a TV miniseries actually, that played over 2 nights, and when put together, those 2 nights events came out at 3 hours long. So you basically got a 3 hour long um, vampire movie, and basically I've seen that. It does get kind of boring due to how long it is, but it has a lot of good stuff in it. Has the perfect adaptation of Salem's Lot ever been made? No. There was the original. There's what I'm going to be talking about today, and there was a remake done in 2004. I don't think the perfect version of that story has been put to film yet. Like you've got like It, like the new It. I think that's the best they're gonna be able to do with that story. You've got like The Shining, which I mean, it's amazing. It's not really what the book is, but like that's a story for another time. And a so Salem's Lot, a return to what Salem's Lot was. It was workshopped a lot before it came out as a movie, and multiple directors and writers put in their scripts for consideration. And the one who eventually got it was Tobe Hooper, director of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I have not seen, but I've heard is one of the greatest horror films of all time. So I guess I should probably get on that eventually. I don't know, I'm busy, I have a lot of work to do. But I'll get to it. Yeah, and basically, you've got uh, Larry Cohen, a director who was more known for like sort of satirical horror films, like horror comedy. He put in a script for the Salem's Lot miniseries. It didn't get approved. They didn't go with his route. They went with the Tobe Hooper route. And for years after that, because like Larry Cohen attempted to like get his own Salem's Lot off the ground, he tried to work on like a potential Salem's Lot TV show that would have spun off from the movie. Didn't get greenlit. He tried to like he spent a long time like talking about like how he wanted to do his own Salem's Lot, and eventually, like he got the right. He hounded like the studio enough that they're just like, okay, fine, you can do like a direct to DVD like VHS sequel to Salem's Lot. Call it a Return to Salem's Lot, and so this was a Return to Salem's Lot. And when I first watched this movie, I was like, oh, this must be a sequel to Salem's Lot, because it's called A Return to Salem's Lot. Well, it turns out it's not really a sequel, it's more of a remake, or a reimagining. It's like Larry Cohen's own version, with like his own sort of satirical take on it. This is the mind. Remember, this is the mind who came up with the movie The Stuff, which is really about like it's a metaphor for the cigarette industry, and it's about evil yogurt that eats you. So like he does have some really cool ideas. Like he does have like some cool ideas, and I'm not being like facetious or anything. Like I did like that movie. I mean, he has some crazy ideas, but like the thing about Larry Cohen is like you look at a lot of directors like early work, and it's like, oh, they're really good, but they're like very like they didn't have a budget for that movie. And like Larry Cohen, he never really hit it big. It was always just, oh, that was really good, but he didn't have like the budget or like the like class, like you've got, or like I mean the status of like being a big director in Hollywood. So he was always just kind of like the little guy who makes like some like cheap like B horror movie, but he had the talent to get big, I think. But like due to like this like lack of like funding and lack of like overview and like other people he could talk to about stuff, you do get a lot of his movies that like while they have good ideas are very muddled, and that is a Return to Salem's Lot, which I actually enjoyed, but it does have some stuff that is kind of hilarious. So, basically, A Return to Salem's Lot, it begins with, actor Michael Moriarty, that's the name of the real actor. He's playing, like, this dad in the movie who's also, like, an anthropologist, and, Michael Moriarty has a great last name, I gotta say, or his full name. It's alliterative, references a Sherlock Holmes villain. I mean, like, if this guy had wanted to rob banks, he could have robbed banks, and he would have sounded really cool in the news when he did it. So the actor Michael Moriarty in this, he's an anthropologist, and like we start this movie in what I believe was someone's backyard, but it was meant to be the middle of like the Amazon rainforest, and he's like, there's like this human sacrifice going on, and he's just filming it, and like his other crew are like, why don't we stop them from like killing that guy? And he doesn't want to, because like he's very immoral. He starts off like his arc in the movie is kind of him growing to like be a human being and stop being like so cold and like distant and like scientific about like this sort of thing, which like it doesn't really work, but like we'll get into that. Basically he ends up like it turns out that this human sacrifice is a fertility ritual, and by fertility ritual they mean the guy getting killed knocked up the wife of the chief. And keep in mind, just when you're picturing this in your head, don't picture Brazil, picture some guy's backyard with a few palm trees and a bunch of... Yeah, so okay, some people come by, they're like, hey, your son is like very sick in America, you need to go back there and see your ex-wife. And he goes to see his ex-wife, and it turns out she lied to him, and the son isn't sick. They just don't like him because he's like a problem child, and they want to like stick him with the dad. And basically, he decides like, okay, I'm gonna take my son to my childhood home in Salem's Lot, where I stayed for a few months with my aunt, and she died recently, so I got, like, in the will, I get the house, like, this old rundown house in Salem's Lot. And now here's the thing. This is a sequel to... This seemed like a sequel to Salem's Lot to me, so, like, at that point it was kind of tracking with me. Like, because... But here's the thing. There is a sequel to Salem's Lot, and it's a short story in a Stephen King book, and I've read it, and not only that... But I am adapting that short story into a short film that I directed and wrote the script for. Like, me, personally, me, Noah. Like, that's something I'm doing. And, like, I've already, like, done all the principal photography. Right now, I'm just working on editing it together. So, like, I know what the sequel to Salem's Lot is. And this is, like, nothing like that short story. So I was kind of, like, thrown for a loop while I was watching this. I'm like, wait, what's happening? He has a kid, and he needs to go to... But I was kind of just like, okay, they're doing something different. Larry Cohen wants to do something different. The guy who made the Killer Baby movies. He wants to do something different. And eventually I'm going to realize, like, this isn't a sequel. This is, like, a remake. But I don't figure that out for a while. So, basically, they decide to go get a car... And, basically, we get to see a little bit of the son's relationship with the father, and the son is just, like, swearing constantly and tries to smoke a cigarette in the car. And, like, he's like this very fashionable like 1980s kid. He's like Corey Haim in the Lost Boys with just like dressing like he's on like a police procedural in like Miami in the 1980s. And basically we get like this funny scene where it's kind of like, oh, there's like a car salesman, and like they end up like he's got charged for like $2,000 for a car, and they both kind of like hustle him until he's gotten it down to like $800. And like that's a lot of fun stuff, and you kind of see the relationship. And they get to Salem's Lot, like it's daytime, no one's out there, and like I'm thinking like, because I've read the book Salem's Lot, I know the sequel's like, oh well, of course, it's a town filled with vampires. None of them are gonna be out during the day, except for maybe like their familiars or something, like the people that like work for the vampires. And lo and behold, I'm right. There's like the sheriff of the town. Seems to be like the only one who goes out during the day, and it's kind of like, okay, yeah, that's the familiar. There's a couple other like familiars and that sort of thing, like the Renfield. Like if you've read Dracula or seen any, like it's the Renfield type. It's the guy who like takes care of the vampire while it's sleeping and like makes sure no one comes in and tries to kill it. And basically they decide to like fix up the old dilapidated house on the hill. And one thing I kind of liked was like there was like a reference to the director of the original Salem's Lot, Toby Hooper, because like the name of like the guy's dead aunt is Hooper, and it's the Hooper house that they're renovating and getting set up and stuff. So basically, you've got like this sort of like weird thing going on where it's like no one's out during the day, and like the sheriff is like, oh, you need to come by and see the judge. She's like in charge of the town, Judge Axel. And you get that, and you get like then this car full of 1980s like punks, like the kind of punks you wouldn't see in real life, like you'd only see in a movie. Like, so just these 1980s, like, they have, like, all mohawks and, like, leather jackets, and, like, they're all wearing neon. They drive down the town in a van, and then, like, the policeman pulls them over, and then vampires attack and start killing them. And one of, like, the 1980s, like, movie, like, punk rock kids manages to escape because the cop is like, go to the church. And I'm kind of like, oh, what's going on with this cop? Like, is he, like, trying to help her? So she goes to the church and the vampires can't get in. And then she goes to, like, the house, like, that, like, the two humans in the town are staying at. The guy and his son, the anthropologist and his son. And, they do that. And, so she comes in, she starts screaming, they realize she's, like, really high and stuff, like, or she's been doing drugs, but, like, she seems to be telling the truth, so they take her to the judge's house, and the judge basically has his people kill her, and reveals that he's a vampire to, like, the guy and his son, and, like, the son gets sent with, like, Tara Reid is in this movie, like, 12-year-old girl, Tara Reid. Yeah, if this is sounding like kind of, if I'm like talking like slowly or like differently, I just want to say that's because I'm like kind of sick right now, and I've kind of got like a little bit of a cold, and at the same time I didn't get as many any notes done. Well, I got a few notes. I didn't get as many notes as I usually get done for this. Like, usually I have like a whole big thing of notes in a Google Doc. I only was able to get a little bit done because like my computer broke and I was like dealing with that. But yeah, so the judge reveals that this is a town of vampires and half vampires, which are called drones and are like the Renfields. And the entire town is vampires. And so the little kid goes off with like 12-year-old Tara Reid to like go to a wedding with her, and it turns out it's a child wedding, and it's like, oh, that's why we have to keep the town so secret. We're vampires and we have weddings here. they're not actually children. They're like 70 something years old, or like they're vampires. They just look like kids because they turned when they were children, and they look like kids like forever now. And I'm kind of like, oh, you don't need to be so secretive about this. Just go to Alabama. Child weddings are legal there. And also, there's like this great scene where like there's two bums like around a campfire, and then some little kids come up to them and start laughing at them, and the bums are like trying to figure out what the kids want, and then just more kids start coming up, and like, oh, there's a bunch of kids, and like just like they get surrounded by children, and then the children all turn out to be vampires, and they're probably like 70 something years old, and then they like attack the bums. And basically, Judge Axel, the leader of the vampires, explains to like the anthropologist, like, we wanted you to come here. Your aunt's not dead. She's a vampire. She just sent the will so you would come to Salem's Lot. And you're here to write write the history of vampires. They refer to it as the Vampire Bible, but they want like the history of vampires in America to be written by a respected anthropologist. And like at first I'm like, okay, that makes sense, but then they're like, oh, we want someone respected in their time, but we don't want anyone to read this until 200 years in the future. I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Do you need some extra time? Time to prepare for? You're getting this guy who's, it doesn't add up. Okay, like some. Okay, you know that. Fuck it. Oh, forget about it. Forget about it. Okay. All right. So the after he learns that they've been murdering people and stuff, the dad basically he has this great line to Judge Axel, which is, "If you didn't have my son, I'd kick your fucking ass around this town until you couldn't suck orange juice." Great line. That's a great line. Like, I mean, a lot of this script is kind of like, could use another draft, but I like that part. So, basically, he's gonna write their, like, vampire history books, and the vampires reveal, like, oh, we only eat people on special occasions. Most of the time, we just eat cows and stuff. And, like, so you could, and, like, these vampires, they do the whole, like, oh, like, we don't murder people unless we have to. You could say we're better than humans. And, like, they're kind of jerks, those vampires. Talking about how much better they are than us. And they're like, oh, we're super rich because, like, we're 300 years old and we bought a bunch of property and sold it. And now, like, if you want financial stability, become a vampire. And, they're giving him the whole spiel about why it's great to be a vampire. And they don't have to pay taxes. Like, Judge Axel is very blatant. Like, we don't pay taxes to the American government because we're vampires. And it's kind of like, oh, so it's like a vampire tea party. Which, I don't know. In some respects, that could be worse than actual vampires. I mean, with the whole, like, not paying taxes. But there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of stuff there. I'm not going to go into that. But, like, there's a lot of stuff there. And, the vampires reveal that, like, they take him to the school where all the little kid vampires are at, and all the little kid vampires, like, they explain, like, the history of, like, America, but from the vampire point of view. And it's like, oh, there was another ship that came with the Mayflower, and we tricked everyone into thinking that ship sank, and it was the vampire ship, the ship filled with vampires. Like, one ship was Puritans trying to get away from England, and the other ship was vampires trying to get away from England. And they settled in Salem's Lot in 1602. Now, this makes no sense for someone thinking this is the sequel, like I did. Like, I was like, what's going on? What's happening? What? That doesn't make sense. Because, in the book, Salem's Lot, and in the previous movie, it's a perfectly normal town, Salem's Lot, until vampires attack it and take over. And in this, it's just kind of like a whole different thing. And at that moment, I realized this is just, Larry Cohen's script for, like, the Salem's Lot movie with the names changed, and his sequel is just a remake. And basically, the guy's son starts to turn into a vampire, like slowly, like over a couple nights, and he's like, okay, we have to get out of this town. We have to escape. We have to stop we have to get away. Like, I'm not gonna write their vampire Bible anymore. And then this old man comes into town, and it's like, I'm a Nazi hunter, and I'm looking for a Nazi that I think is in this town. And like he's like, and and like basically they team up with the Nazi hunter to try and kill the vampires. And actually, I shouldn't be calling him a Nazi hunter because this is his line he has in the movie. I'm not a Nazi hunter, I'm a Nazi killer. So I guess we should be calling him a Nazi killer. So he's looking for this Nazi, Kesserling. And, he never finds Kesserling in this movie. He's just kind of like, oh, I must have the wrong town, but, like, while I'm here, I might as well kill the vampires. Because, like, vampires, Nazis, about the same level evil-wise, I guess. So, like, yeah. Okay. So, they end up, there's, like, this great bus scene where, like, a bus, like a tour bus, is, like, rerouted and sent into the center of the vampire town. And then, like, Judge Axel comes up and is like, hey, everyone, get out of this bus. And then, like, all the vampires in town just run up and start biting people. And, like, it's a cool scene. Oh, I completely forgot to mention, there is a conflict that, the main character, the anthropologist, has. Because, see, when he went to the town, when he was, like, a little younger kid and stuff, he had, like, a romantic relationship with like, this girl who was 17. And, like, basically, that girl's still there, and she's, like, the same age physically, but, like, she still wants to date him, but he's, like, 40-something. So it's weird, though. It is a weird thing. Like, I can kind of see what, like, they were going for with the film, like, because it's, like, the fantasy versus reality, I guess, but, like, it's weird. It is weird. And uncomfortable. So, basically, they kidnap his son after, like, the Nazi hunter and the Nazi killer and him. They go door to door, like, finding the vampires and killing them, and they fight a bunch of vampires, and they're throwing holy water at people, and we keep seeing this big blue-looking puppet vampire, and it is the, like, dumbest, like, most terrible special effect, like, I've seen it. It looks like a Halloween mask, but, like, all lumpy and, like, and stuff, but, like, so, in the film Salem's Lot, like, the vampire is, like, the head vampire in the film Salem's Lot, they do, like, the Nosferatu thing. They've got, like, the big vampire with, like, that's, like, bald, and it's got, like, red eyes and, like, fangs coming out, like, the center of its mouth. Like, it's, like, got a mouthful of fangs and, like, that sort of thing. And it's very scary in that movie. Like, it is a pretty creepy. Kurt Barlow, the vampire in, like, the original Salem's Lot movie. And in this, it feels like they were trying to replicate his appearance, but, like, failed a lot. Like, they failed at a level that I have not seen before, because it looks like a Halloween mask that someone is just parading around on, like, a stick. Like, that's how bad this vampire looks. And it's not scary, it's just ugly and, like, Muppet-like. So, that vampire is revealed to be Judge Axel, like, the king vampire in the town. And so they're setting all the houses on fire, they're killing the vampires, and then they head to the school where, like, his son has been kidnapped and taken to the school, and, like, they've got, like, this, like, setup, like, it looks like they're about to have a school play, and Judge Axel is up on stage, he's like, oh, come stay for the performance, and I'm getting really excited at this point, because I'm like, oh, are they going to, are all the vampire kids going to put on a school play about their evil master plan and how they're going to kill his kid if he doesn't listen to them? Sadly, that doesn't happen. All the little kids dressed in costume, they just go off stage, and then Judge Axel starts doing, like, a villainous monologue and talking about how he's going to stake his son like he staked all the vampires and stuff. And I was disappointed because I really wanted a bunch of vampires doing a school play. And I guess I'm just not gonna get that. So, they manage. The Nazi hunter, shoots, Judge Axel. Then, like, Judge Axel survives getting shot. The Nazi hunter shoots himself in the stomach so he can die instead of being bitten by the vampire. Uh, they start setting everything on fire, like setting all the coffins on fire. All the vampires can't go back in their coffins, and the sun's gonna be coming up soon. The whole town is burning. He saves his son, goes to escape. Judge Axel chases after him, and like Judge Axel gets the upper hand of the anthropologist, starts beating him up, is gonna bite him, and then the child actor, like the son of the anthropologist, comes up behind Judge Axel and stabs him with an American flag. And you know what? I guess that's kind of ironic. I guess not paying taxes really came back to bite Judge Axel. Pun intended with the bite part. Because he's a vampire. It's yeah, that was a nice moment. Now the whole town's burning. The It's revealed that the Nazi killer isn't dead. He faked his death. Um, and he's stolen the tour bus that's been abandoned now, and they all escape from the town in the tour bus. All the vampires burn when the sun comes up. They've saved the day, and they all just ride off into the sunset. And I guess now they're gonna go find. They're all gonna work together and find Kesserling, the Nazi, who remember is somewhere in Maine. So they're gonna go find him, and it's happy ending until they pass by a field of cows, and then the camera holds just a little too long on those cows, and I think in my head, vampire cows. And then the movie ends, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like, I'm not gonna. I think like maybe if they had a bigger budget and more time to work on the script, it could have been better. But like, yeah, that was cool. So you know what? Like Larry Cohen, he made a lot of good movies, and thank you Larry Cohen for all those movies. In memory of Larry Cohen. And next week, I will talk about Justice League and how I genuinely really dislike that movie. But like this week, I gotta talk about something a bit more fun, like this fun like Larry Cohen like cheesy B movie, and like it was good. So thank you everyone for watching, and have a great week. All right, goodbye.